Boyle County Public Library has a number of papers from notable people in the county, as well as papers from people that would remain unknown, except the fact that something from their lives wound up being saved at the library. And such is the case right here with a little piece of paper that is an 1832 title bond between two families for a piece of property in what is now Boyle County. The property sits out in what originally was described as Chaplin's Fork of the Salt River in Mercer County. Today, we call that area Tank Pond in southwestern Boyle County near Parksville. The property was first bought by John Broyles from his father, Michael Broyles, 25 acres. The other 51 acres that made up the purchase of 76 3/4 acres was bought from John Miner. In December of 1832, John Broyles was selling this, and John and Duncan Parr were buying this property as a place for Duncan and his new wife, Cynthia Latimer, to live on. John Broyles would take the money from this sale and later move to Perryville, where he stayed. The father, John Parr, would die within a short time after the sale of the property and is buried somewhere in Boyle County in an unmarked grave. His son Duncan Parr and his new wife Cynthia would have 4 children while living there on the property and would live there for 20 years. Cynthia died in 1852, and Duncan felt after her death that he would remove the family to Rusk County, Texas, a place called Henderson, and there began life anew. Soon after moving to Rusk County, he met a young widow from Tennessee, and by 1856 they had a little boy, and then in 1859, a little girl. By December of 1862, Duncan, now nearing 50 years old, found himself as a private in Company B of the 18th Texas Cavalry Confederate. His oldest son, James William, would join him in the 18th Texas Cavalry. Together, they went through the Civil War. Duncan and James would separate. Duncan would be transferred to Mackay's squadron at the 21st Texas, and the last we hear of him ever is going into Cato, Arkansas to catch up with his unit. James William would be at the final surrender of the last units in Galveston, Texas in June of 1865. With him would be his younger brother, George Parr, who as a 15-year-old joined the 1st Texas Coastal Defense. Both boys would survive the war and return home after December of 1866. As bad as the war was, returning home could be seen as worse. They were returning to a home that was decimated, the death of their stepmother sometime during the war, finding that the remaining children at home were put into an orphanage, and the fact that a tornado struck that orphanage just before they returned back home from the war, killing their younger brother Nelson. James William would marry by April of 1867, and he and his wife had no children, but then he adopted his half-brother and half-sister and raised them as his own. George Parker would not marry and would die in Henderson many years later. Such is the power of a piece of little paper between people unknown and unfamous that tells Kentucky's history all by itself.